All right, I'm ready to sort of turn a corner here with you. I want to start getting into some animation and some rollover effects, and I want to start getting into working with the timeline and maybe a little bit of action script. What I want to do here with you, we're going to start off this whole idea of, working with special effects and animation and so on here in Flash with something very simple, and it's just a nice, tasteful rollover effect. What I want to do is this More button that we have sitting in the middle of our interface. I want to set it up so that when the visitor or the user comes along and moves their mouse over top of the More button, I want the text to change color. I want the arrow to change color as well. And I also want the arrow to rotate. I want it to turn 90 degrees, right? So again, it's just a nice, simple, easy rollover effect. So there's lots of steps to pull this off here. So here we go. Here it is. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create a new symbol. So I'm going to head to the Insert menu and then down to New Symbol. Okay. For a name, I'm going to call this guy White Arrow Rollover. White Arrow Rollover. So this is obviously going to be for our white arrow, and I'm going to set his type there. Make sure the type drop-down menu is set to movie clip, and go ahead and click on OK. All right, now what happens is we're thrown into our white arrow rollover movie clip. So you can see the movie clip symbol is added to the bottom of the library panel, and I see nothing. I just see white. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to expand the timeline. We've got one layer now and a single frame inside the timeline. I hope you know a little bit about movie clip symbols, and I'm assuming that you've messed around with them a little bit. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and find my white arrow graphic symbol inside the library panel, and I'm going to drag and drop an instance of my white arrow graphic symbol into the white arrow rollover movie clip. So he's now sitting on frame 1, right? But it's a white arrow on a white background, which makes it pretty tough to see, right? So here's something that I do in this situation. I'm just going to flip back over to the Properties panel for a second and just make sure that you don't have anything selected on your stage. Maybe just click once or twice in an empty area on your stage. And inside the Properties panel, of course, you can change your stage color. So maybe temporarily what I'll do is I'll just change my background color to gray, or any color really. It doesn't matter which color. Okay, now we can see our graphic symbol there. Okay, perfect. Now here's what I'm going to do. I want to make sure that this guy is lined up in the dead center of the stage. So I'm going to use my Align panel. I'm going to head up to the Window menu and then look for Align, or Controller Command K if you want. That's the handy keyboard shortcut. All right, there's our Align panel. Okay, I want to line this up with the stage, so turn on Align to Stage. This is very similar to an option we saw back in Illustrator, and I'm going to just simply say Align horizontally, Align vertically, and Bob's your uncle. That's it. Okay, great. Go ahead and close out of the Align panel. All right, now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go and drop a keyframe inside frame 10 on the timeline. So go ahead and drop your cursor inside frame 10 on the timeline. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit F6 on my keyboard. And what that'll do is that will insert a keyframe for me and also duplicate the previous frame. And again, I'm not going to get into a whole discussion on the timeline and frames and keyframes and all that good stuff. I'm assuming that you've done a little bit of this already. And if this is your first time doing this, well, you're in for a treat anyway. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to take this fella, this white arrow here, and I want to rotate him, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that he's selected there down on the stage, and I'm going to use my transform palette, I think. So I'm going to head to the Window menu here once again and transform, or Controller Command T. There we go. And we have a rotate option in there. I'm just going to click in there. 9-0, enter. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. A bunch of different ways to go about rotating your content inside Flash. That's how I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, what else? Well, I said earlier that I wanted this arrow here to change color with the rotation, right? So make sure that you have your graphic symbol selected there, and we're going to go and tint this guy. So make sure he's selected there, And then inside the properties panel, underneath color effect, you might have to expand that area there. From the style drop-down menu, I'm going to choose tint. There we go. And it may have already thrown in, it did. It already threw in my color, which is great because I already tested this to make sure it would work. So on your side, here's what you're going to need to do. We have red, green, and blue sliders, right? So what I did before I hit record is I went all the way back to Illustrator and I figured out the RGB values for the light blue that you and I had set up back in Illustrator. And this is really something I maybe should have mentioned when we went and imported our Illustrator layout into Flash, is those 3 color swatches that we created back in Illustrator did not get imported into Flash, which is a bit of a drag. So then I had to go back to Illustrator. Remember I was saying that I like to work in CMYK even when I'm working on something that's going to be viewed on a monitor, like a website or a Flash interface, right? Well, I had to go and do the conversion from CMYK to RGB, figure out the values. I jotted them down on a scrap piece of paper, and then I come into Flash here, color effect, tint, and then for red, it's going to be 98. This is for our light blue, right? Green is going to be 163. Blue is going to be 214. And just make sure that the tint slider up at the top is set to 100%. And you should get the exact same light blue color that I have here. Okay, perfect. I hope all that made sense. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is we want to animate this guy. And I'm just going to animate this in a very simple way using something that's referred to as a classic tween. So here's what I'm going to do on the timeline. Right-click anywhere along your timeline there within your frames and choose Create Classic Tween. There we go. And so now what's happening, if I drag my playhead here, if I scrub the timeline there, this is where it's going to start. It's going to start to rotate, and you can see the color transition that's happening there, just like that. That's exactly what I want. Again, it's just a very simple rotation. It's a very simple animation effect that we're getting here. Okay, perfect. Now, there's more to this, though. We still have to set up that More button. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to flip back to scene 1, go all the way back to where we started. I should really go and change the background of my stage, but we'll worry about that in a second. I want you to save your Flash file as well. Now what we'll do in the next exercise is we'll continue along and we'll finish off creating this rollover animation effect.